The 2023 cycle has come to an end. Alabama finishes with the top class in America, and I hope your favorite team got all the players that were on your recruiting wish list. We're going to review the highlights from yesterday's Wednesday signing day, and then it's time to turn the page to 2024. But before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to Sumner Darlington, my producer, who's moving on to bigger pastures. This will be his last show, but we appreciate all the work he's done here on the Inside Scoop. Now let's bring on Director of Recruiting for On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, leading up to National Signing Day, there was 4 players in the top 100 that were still uncommitted, unsigned. Those guys were Duce Robinson, Nyckoles Harbor, Jaden Rashada, and Rodrick Pleasant. So let's start there and recap how they finalized their recruitments. Jaden Rashada was the first one to come off the board. He announced his commitment to Arizona State early on February 1st. Chad, how did Arizona State get Jaden Rashada after all the drama that went down in his recruitment?
Well, I think most know by now, obviously, his dad played there. His brother lives in the Tempe area. So he grew up watching Arizona State, grew up following the program. He was recruited by the old staff, Herm Edwards, and that staff early in his recruitment as well. And they've always been on his radar until the coaching changed. Herm Edwards, those guys split. Once Dillingham came, and then obviously he got out of the NIL to the University of Florida, things quickly accelerated back with Arizona State, and that relationship with Dillingham going from Florida State to Oregon, now to Arizona State, played a big role in this final decision where the Sun Devils beat TCU for Jaden Rashada.
How important is it for a guy like Kenny Dillingham, who just arrived at Arizona State, to get a quarterback like Jaden Rashada?
No, it's big. I think Dillingham, if there's one area he's confident in, is that he'll get his quarterback. I mean, he's known for that QB guy. I mean, from his time at Auburn to Florida State to Oregon, what he did with Bo Nix last year caught a lot of quarterbacks' attention, and the top 10 offense he put on the field at Oregon. So I think he feels good about getting that guy. But to get a guy that's been a headline kid in this 2024 class, a big name, a national recruit, to kick off your first recruiting class was big for Dillingham.
Yeah, great start. All right, moving on, a 5-star athlete, Nyckoles Harbor. Now, leading up to signing day, there was rumors that Oregon was surging because they got that final official visit. And then about 24 hours before, we started hearing more and more about South Carolina. In the end, it's the Gamecocks that signed the #1 athlete in America. How did it go down, and what happened in the final 24 hours?
You know, with Harbor, he kept things extremely tight within his, I would say, extremely tight inner circle. I mean, obviously his family, he had a big marketing team. Just a few people really knew exactly what was going down. Someone like me trying to put the pieces together based on what you're hearing from, talking to his dad, different sources, maybe they have connections to Oregon or South Carolina or Maryland, trying to put it all together. It definitely seemed to come down to Oregon and South Carolina late. You know, South Carolina's been in this much, much longer than the Oregon Ducks. Oregon obviously has a lot to offer from the Nike brand, from the track facilities to the overall football program. And then you had South Carolina just stayed consistent, developed that relationship, just kept that consistency, making him feel important. Hey, you feel at home. He was part of a group chat with the commitments in that class. He knew a lot of people in Columbia and that were going to be in Columbia. And in the end, like you said, South Carolina had the edge maybe 2 days ago. Oregon surged late, maybe late Tuesday, early Wednesday. In the end, Beamer Ball, as you called it, Shane Beamer and company in South Carolina, shut it down, closed the door, and landed that 5-star freak athlete to be a Gamecock.
What's in Shane Beamer's special sauce? How is he getting recruiting going at South Carolina the way he is?
I think, number one, very personable. Number two, energy. Number three, I think it's just he's who he is. Like, people say he's genuine. You see, him on social media having fun, sunglasses, dancing on TikTok, Instagram, but he's not just putting on a show for social media. That's who he is, these kids say, in person, on visits, in the office, very loose, tries to make it comfortable with the family, with the parents, with the recruits, and just stays consistent. I don't think he hears the word no. He doesn't know what the word no means. He's going to stay with you, keep going, and they stayed with that with Nick Harbor until the end, and that paid off.
They really did, because they got an early and official visit from Nick Harbor, and I was kind of pessimistic that that official visit would last, that impact of that visit would last all the way to signing day. But like you said, Shane Beamer never gives up, stays on him, and they land him. Let's go from one number one player at their position to another. 5-star tight end Duce Robinson, the number one tight end in the nation. It was down to UGA, Texas, and USC heading into February 1st signing day, but he didn't sign. What happened to Duce Robinson yesterday?
Yeah, this one took a late twist, Josh. If you would have asked me a week ago on this show who might be the guy that doesn't sign on February 1, I think we all would have said probably Jaden Rashada would have been that guy that takes it into later in February, March, spring, or who knows when. Not Duce Robinson. This definitely changed, I'd say, over the last few days. And I think a lot of people are in his ear, giving him a lot to think about. And I think he's had multiple, baseball executives in the home. He's done multiple baseball tryouts for his draft status in July. And his stock in baseball seems to be on the extreme rise right now. And I think he's taken that into consideration, just weighing the options. If he does sign, how does that impact his draft status as an MLB baseball player? And also, I think maybe he's not 100% sure on who he wants to sign with if he signs. I do still think Georgia may be the team to beat, but I've heard from more than one source that USC is strongly in this as well. And you can't count out Texas 100%, but I'm here USC and Georgia are the main two football programs, and you have all those 32 baseball programs looking to maybe draft Duce Robinson come July.
Do you think that we'll see Duce Robinson take a visit or two this spring?
Based on what I'm hearing, I would say no right now. Now, I think right now his focus is on baseball. I think there's still some dialogue with college coaches, with Georgia, with SC, maybe Texas as well, whether it's him, somebody in his family, at least communicating with those schools to kind of keep them in the loop of what they're doing, what they're feeling. But right now, I think his focus is on baseball, the baseball tryouts, the travel season coming up, and then seeing kind of how it falls baseball-wise. Right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Duce chooses not to sign and takes this thing into the summer.
All right, let's head over to 4-star cornerback Rodrick Pleasant. He was the top uncommitted corner heading into the day. USC and Oregon were battling it out down the stretch, and he ends up committing to Oregon. Why do you think the Ducks were able to pull him over the Trojans?
Yeah, I don't know if people saw, the video of Pleasant committing and putting the hat on, but did it with a little bit of, I think, emotion, a little bit of anger. I think people were pressuring him to stay home and play at SC. And obviously he did love SC, the program, football, track. His brother, Dominic Davis, went there and played football as well. So I think the pressure, he was feeling that. But I think down deep, I was told he just went with his gut. He felt best about Oregon from the football side, his connection with Demetrius Martin, known as Meat in the coaching world, the DB coach in Eugene. And then the track program. He's an elite track guy, just like talking about Nick Harbor. Pleasant's that guy as well, setting records in the 100-meter. He's a guy that will do both sports in college too. And in the end, I'm told it came down to just a gut feeling, and he felt best about Oregon.
How about that emotional roller coaster for Dan Lanning yesterday? Missing out on Nick Harbor, but he still lands the top uncommitted corner, top 100 corner Rodrick Pleasant. What do you make of Dan Lanning's recruiting in 2023?
Love it. I mean, I love what he did. Obviously, come in year one. I mean, put some big wins together on the field. I think he has a great staff, man, from talking about Meat Martin to Tosh Lapoy, Adrian Clem, himself, knowing how to get it done on the recruiting trail as a head coach. I mean, he has that quiet confidence, the energy, and he's going to try to land guys across the country. He's going to go head-to-head with whoever it is, USC, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. He feels he can recruit at that level, and I love what he's doing there at Oregon.
All right, let's get into the best of the rest from National Signing Day. Let's start at the top with Cormani McClain. He makes it official and signs with the Buffaloes. Chad, what do you make of his recruitment? Can you believe that he ends up in Colorado after all this?
I mean, yeah, at this point, February 2nd, yes, I can believe it.
No, but I remember a year ago today.
A couple months ago or a year ago, definitely not a year ago. Even a couple months ago, I'm still thinking, he's probably going to end up with Miami and stay there and go to South Florida. But yeah, I mean, obviously another Huge get for Deion, makes another big splash, back-to-back signing classes, Travis Hunter, Kevin Coleman last year, going to Jackson State this year, Cormani McClain, an elite cornerback from Lakeland, Florida, which is full of athletes. He's going to bring that long athletic frame for Deion to build and mold in Boulder, Colorado. Obviously, you expect McClain to get on campus, compete, and play early. So it'll be fun to watch him under Deion. Can Deion maybe give him a little bit of that charisma, that personality? Cormani's so quiet, so bland. Let's see some trash talk and some energy from Cormani when he gets out there at Colorado.
Yeah, we'll see if he can help him with that. But the one thing I do know he's going to help him with is his play on the field. Cormani McClain, already one of the most elite corners in the country. Fully expect him and Travis Hunter to take the field next year in 2023. I can't wait to watch them. Let's move on to 4-star tight end Walker Lyons. A bit of a surprise here. Heading into signing day, we thought the number 117 player overall, the number 7 ranked tight end, was going to end up at UGA, but he ends up signing with USC. How was Lincoln Riley able to pull this one off?
Yeah, for the last couple of months, it was trending towards Georgia for sure, Josh, on my end anyway. And, obviously when he picked, Stanford initially, Utah was in there. He has connections to BYU. USC was involved, but they kind of went quiet for, I would say, 4 or 5 months there. And just in the last few weeks, quietly jumped back in the mix. And most people thought it was going to be, I didn't think it was Georgia late, but it would seem to be going more towards Utah. USC sneaks in, grabs him late. Great job. Obviously, we know about Walker Lyons being a little bit different, where he won't enroll here in 2023, going on a mission to Norway for 1.5 years. So he'll actually be part more of the 24 class. But either way, he's an elite tight end that can block, that can catch, that can run. A very good get for Lincoln Riley in that offensive scheme in LA.
Yeah, one of the bigger surprises of the day yesterday. Also, 4-star offensive tackle Chimdi Ono. He signs with Penn State. Penn State has a really nice offensive line class with the addition of Ono. And then moving on to Jamel Howard. Here's a guy that we talked about leading up to signing day. He's ranked in the thousands, but he was committed to Wisconsin until November. He decommits. Looks like he's going to sign with Michigan after back-to-back visits in December, but he declines to sign. Then his recruitment just absolutely blows up. LSU, Miami, Illinois, others all interested in Howard. And he does one of the rarer things you see in recruiting. He ends up signing with the team that he decommitted from. You very rarely see the going back on your decommitment. He signs with Wisconsin, so that was kind of an interesting recruitment. Moving on to a pair of uncommitted twins heading into signing day, linebackers Andrew and Michael Harris. They were expected to be a package deal to the same school, but on signing day, they decided to split. Tell us about what happened there.
Yeah, you just talked about Howard going back to the school he decommitted from. Started Andrew Harris going back
Very
to
rare.
UCF, which doesn't happen very often. Even more rare, twins separating, going different schools. And look, if you would have told me that, a couple of days ago, I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, I've met those guys, been around them. I thought they were inseparable. I know both programs wanted the package deal, but obviously Andrew going back to UCF, staying home in Central Florida, and then Michael going to Maryland up north to the Big Ten country. So they're going to go their own way, create their own paths, and make names for themselves.
All right, moving on. Let's do some signing day superlatives from the 2023 class. I'm going to give you a list of decommitments or flips. I want you to pick your favorite here, most shocking. Pick your most shocking flip. Dante Moore flips from Oregon to UCLA. That was a big one. Peyton Bowen flips from Notre Dame to Oregon and eventually to Oklahoma. Cormani McClain flips from Miami to Colorado. And then Jaden Rashada flipped in the middle of the night in November from Miami to UF. Chad, all memorable recruitments. Which was the most shocking to you?
I have to still say Cormani McClain, just when he didn't sign during the early signing period and started kind of putting things together that we heard obviously pretty quickly Colorado was involved. I have to go back to that because obviously we heard, I think Bowen is probably the least surprising, least shocking. Right. I think for 6 months we did not think he'd end up at Notre Dame. Obviously, it was kind of a little bit crazy with Oregon to Oklahoma, but I would have to go with Cormani McClain.
Yeah, I got Cormani or Dante Moore. Both those kind of came out of nowhere for me. Let's talk about the class with the most underrated talent. That goes to the Florida Gators. Tell me about Eugene Wilson, Jakeem Jackson, and Kelby Collins.
Well, I mean, just quickly, Eugene Wilson, speed to burn. Obviously, I think he'll fit right in at the University of Florida's offense, playing fast, can stretch the field, can take the short pass and make a big play. Kelby Collins was a huge get for Florida going into Gardendale, Alabama, a kid that Alabama wanted, a kid that Georgia wanted, and beating out the in-state school and major SEC powers. And he's a guy that can move around along the defensive front, can play outside, inside, can play the run, can rush the passer. And then I think one of the most, I don't want to say unheralded, but, a guy like Jakeem Jackson, I think should have been talked about more. I saw him play multiple times, and I had coaches in that area that played Osceola were telling me just how good this kid was and wasn't talked about maybe as much as Cormani McClain, and maybe he should have been in that same group. I mean, he played offense, defense. He's physical, returns punts. I love to get for Florida on the defensive backfield side with Jakeem Jackson.
Best receiver room goes to none other than Ohio State. It feels like we could do this every year, but in 2023, they really signed a special class with Noah Rogers, Carnell Tate, and Brandon Inniss.
Yeah, I think you got to put, Bryson Rogers in there too. I mean, he's another kid from Florida, a quartet, not just a trio, but you're talking about Brandon Inniss, who I think is one of the highest floor kids in this country that will come in, can run great routes, very dependable, catches everything, physical, and just makes plays. Carnell Tate, exciting, deep threat, body control, makes the big play. Noah Rogers looks like a grown man playing on Sundays right now, that can come in and play inside, outside, be that next Marvin Harrison, move around, create mismatches, and be a freak of nature. Then Bryson Rogers coming up from Florida as well, a kid I saw at OT7, a kid I saw last spring, can stretch the field. He's long, big catch radius. So again, Brian Hartline still coaching receivers, moving up to the OC position, has a lot of toys to play with at wide receiver in Columbus.
Best defensive class in America goes to Alabama. Chad, if you look up and down this list, you can't go wrong, but look at the top. I mean, Keon Keeley, Caleb Downs, Desmond Ricks, James Smith, Quay Rousseau. Is this just not the best defensive class in America?
This is just Nick Saban mic dropping right now. I mean, look, he's a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, just like you said, one after another on that list. And I've said for about, a year and a half, 2 years, I think Caleb Downs may be the best football player in America, maybe the most college-ready player in America. That kid can do it all on the back end of the defense. He took his team to a state championship this year at Mill Creek in the state of Georgia. Then you had the package deal of Quay Rousseau, a nasty edge rush guy from Montgomery Carver, then James Smith, who I think is one of the most athletic big men on the defensive line in this class. Keon Keeley, a top 2 player in America for us on 3 out of Tampa, Berkeley Prep High School down in your part of the country, Josh, where you're from, an elite freak off the edge, super long arms, natural athlete. Then they closed things up right before Christmas on December 23rd with 5-star Desmond Ricks, or elite cornerback Desmond Ricks, who everybody thought LSU, Bama swoops in late, takes him away from the people in Baton Rouge, and just kind of close out and put a bow on that elite, memorable defensive class this cycle.
Yeah, Bama gonna Bama. All right, best offensive class in America goes to Texas, starting right at the top there with Arch Manning. They also land the number 1 running back in America, Cedric Baxter, Jonte Cook, and DeAndre Moore, 2 burner wide receivers in that class as well. Tell me about Texas's offensive class.
Firepower, man. I mean, Sark's known as an offensive mind. I mean, he's going to get his offensive guys 100%. Guys want to play for him. He's creative. He throws the ball. He puts guys in position to make plays, and they recognize that. And as big as, I think, Arch Manning, obviously the Manning name, the Manning brand, it was huge for Texas. I mean, I love to get a Cedric Baxter going into Florida, beating out his dream school, Florida State. He committed early to a guy like Jimbo Fisher when he was there at Florida State early in the process. A&M tried to swoop in and get involved there. Texas held off for the number 1 running back in the country, and I think that was huge. Obviously, when you get a guy like Arch, guys want to play with Arch, and that's Jonte Cook coming from Texas. DeAndre Moore, they flipped late, was a Louisville commit. Like you said, speed guys that can play slot, guys that can play outside. But again, I think offensive firepower going to Austin this cycle.
No doubt. It's going to be exciting. All right, deepest class in America. This is a coin flip. Alabama or Georgia? Who you taking? Or both. You can take both.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either or, but I think you have to lean maybe towards Alabama, just being on top with the over half a dozen 5-stars. I mean, obviously Georgia. We talked about this yesterday. I mean, in a normal year, Georgia probably finishes #1, but Bama had a different year. They had an A&M type of year a year ago with an elite class, and Georgia and Bama both have extremely deep classes full of playmakers on both sides of the ball. But if I had to go one way, probably give Bama the edge.
All right. Well, that's it for 2023. Wipe our hands. It's time to turn the page. Let's start with 2024 right now. Let's start at the top. The #1 player in America, Dylan Raiola, the #1 quarterback. Catch us up on the latest in his recruitment and where things stand.
Right now, early in February, I think he gets back on the road in March. I think right now he has visits locked in to Georgia, March 18th, the week after on March 25th weekend. I think to Nebraska right now. Obviously, things can change in a month and a half, but right now, those 2 trips, looking to get to Oregon as well, and he's coming off the visit to USC. I think USC, Georgia, and Nebraska are the 3 schools positioned the best for Raiola at this time, and I'd be surprised if his recruitment gets to the summer, definitely before his senior year. I think he makes a decision.
All right, we'll be tracking that one. One that we were watching yesterday was Ellis Robinson. He came off the board, the #1 corner in America, commits to the Dogs. Georgia starts 2024 off hot. What do you like about Ellis Robinson?
Size, length, aggression. He's a guy at corner, I think, that's made to play in the SEC. I mean, he had 5 schools on the list, but pretty much down to Bama and Georgia, which I think he is perfect for either scheme. I mean, he loves to play press coverage. He loves to tackle, loves to mix it up physicality. He'll fit in perfectly for Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp's defense there at Georgia.
All right, Chad, give me 3 names to know for 2024.
I think, I was in the office yesterday talking with Charles Power. We talked about, wide receivers. I mean, obviously Jeremiah Smith, one of the best players in America, committed to none other than Ohio State early on with Brian Hartline. But keep an eye on schools like Florida, Miami. He's going to take some visits. USC's in the mix, maybe Georgia as well. Staying in receiver, going over to Texas, Lake Belton, Micah Hudson, another speedster. There's been some buzz around Texas. Keep an eye on Texas Tech. Also, another school, Ohio State's in the mix there also. Again, I think any top receiver is probably going to have Ohio State on their list somewhere, and the same is for Micah Hudson. David Stone's been a hot name, put out his top schools late in December. But a school making a big surge here over the last few weeks is Michigan State. He was in East Lansing the last 2 weekends in January. He was at one time thought to be a strong Oklahoma lean. He's from Oklahoma City. He'll be back in Norman probably in March, but keep an eye on Michigan State. They're trending right now for David Stone Jr.
Right. We'll see what happens there. One thing I know from watching the 2023 cycle, Brent Venables at Oklahoma is not giving up on any of these 5-stars. So keep an eye on David Stone, even if he commits to Michigan State. All right, let's take a look at the On3 2024 top 10 rankings. We were just talking about Ellis Robinson committing to Georgia. That puts the Dogs at #1 as we head into the beginning of the 24 cycle. Alabama 2, UF at 3, Ohio State 4, Notre Dame 5, Louisville at 6, South Carolina at 7, FSU at 8, LSU at 9, and Michigan State rounds out the top 10. Chad, what team on here do you think really needs to finish within the top 10?
I don't know. I think all probably need to. Michigan State obviously wants to bounce back from a tough year. I mean, Louisville would love to take a big, with a new head coach, a big step forward also. But keep an eye on South Carolina. Obviously, they made a huge, move yesterday with Nick Harbor. But keep an eye on South Carolina. A lot of buzz around top prospects looking strongly at Beamer ball there in Columbia. And they could, obviously, coming off a strong season in year 2 under Beamer, could make a big push this recruiting cycle.
All right. Well, as we shut the door on 23, we open it up for 24. Chad, thanks for joining the Inside Scoop. We'll talk to you throughout the offseason.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh.
See you. Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.